I'm now talking with Rick Durlu, who is Senior Vice President Customers and Chief Customer Officer at Pratt & Whitney at ISTAT. Thank you very much for speaking with me.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So, 20 years ago, Pratt & Whitney had a monopoly.
Maybe 30 years ago.
30 years ago. They had a monopoly on the DC-9, 7.2, 737. And that was a fantastic period, but there's an argument there wasn't enough innovation, and along came a competitor to sweep in.
Yep.
It looks like, through good karma, in the 100 to 150 seat market, you're going to have a monopoly again.
Sure. Monopoly is a strong word, but yes, we're
going
to have a very strong presence in a market we once vacated.
So what's different this time?
No, I think to understand where we're going, you have to understand how we got here too, right? So if you think about it, when we had a much larger base, there was two things really are different this time. One, we were betting at the time, and it's Monday morning quarterback, but we were betting on the 757, right? We did not envision at that time, or my predecessors, about hub and spoke. When deregulation happened, we were really thinking the 757 was going to be the platform that was going to explode. Deregulation happens, hub and spoke, and the 737 just took off. So I think that kind of left us a little bit out of sorts as far as capturing all that market. So that's one element that happened. I think the other thing that's different this time is, for 20 years, we invested over 20 years now, we invested in the GTF technology. So, the company had the foresight to realize there needed to be a differentiator in the market. I think we invested, and it positioned us for that. And there was a turning point, right? As you remember, there was a lot of interest in 787 wide bodies. But I think ultimately the company believed in two things. One, they believed in the narrow body market as being a very huge part of the industry, and we weren't in it in any strong presence other than through IE, and certainly not in the 100 to 150 seat market. But I think that was an important, time for us in investing in that market. So we sit here today, right? It's one of the fortunes of being with GTF technology was the benefit of being on platforms we hadn't been on before. Whether it's the C Series, the E2, the MRJ, and we were not in that space. So today, to your point, we have a very large presence, or will be, as far as deliveries are concerned. So I think the thing that we've tried to do is leverage, right? As you know, we're in service today with both the C Series and the Neo. We've tried to leverage those learnings into these other platforms. And I think the future, right, is fantastic. And you see in the market a lot of gauging, right? So we maybe didn't think about this when we first started this journey, but you look at, the CEO market today, the CEO market in the past, A319s and A320s were the dominant airplanes. Today, you see the A320s and A321s, so everyone's kind of gauging up. And it's left that space, the 100 to 150 seat space open. And I think the E2 and the C Series are a perfect fit for it. I'm a big fan, actually, of the potential Airbus partnering with Bombardier. I think it's a perfect mix of airplanes, whether it's CS100 and 300, coupled with an A320, A321. It makes a lot of sense. And I think, it's still a little earlier in the process, but I think there's going to be those similar synergies if Boeing and Embraer go forward with their plans as well.
Do you have any sense, public sense that is, at Pratt & Whitney, of how big the market would be between 100 and 150 seats?
Yeah, we see it, because of the gauging up, we see it maybe bigger than we used to. We think it's worth 5,000 aircraft in that space. Right, we have quite a big backlog today, as you know, 8,000 plus engines and growing. A big chunk of those are in that regional space. They're in the, E2, C Series, and MRJ. So I think the one thing that it's going to be interesting to see play out is the smaller side of that regional market, right? And where scope clause goes in the U.S. will probably have impact on how much product is put out there in the U.S. But we're pretty optimistic about where it's going.
So I did ask a question of Bombardier and Embraer, which I'd like to ask you too. The question goes like this. Delta made a decision last year on this segment.
Very good decision.
Very good decision. And the question is, given that decision and knowing that this is an industry where there's always a game theory at play,
yep.
Can American, United, JetBlue, Alaska, etc., Can they ignore that decision in that segment, or do they need to react? Southwest, how do they react?
No, look, I think they can't ignore it, right? Delta is one of the world's leading airlines, and some people look to them as being market makers. And the fact that they chose that C-Series airplane has really helped build momentum around the entire program, to be completely honest. So no, I don't think other airlines could ignore it. I think they recognize the value both the C-Series and E2 brings, and I think the E2 190, 195 would be a fantastic airplane in the U.S. As well as the other majors around the world.
Now that's my next follow-on to that is outside of the North American experience. Of course, we have Canada also has jumped in for this into the segment. If one looks beyond the North American experience, how influential do you think these North American decisions are for markets outside?
Look, I think the decisions influence, but I think ultimately the technology from the airplane and the engines are what really should be driving the decisions of airlines around the world, right? There's a lot of value in what that product brings to the market, and you can't ignore it. Right? I think one of the things you see a lot, and I'm going to go back to the U.S. a little bit, but scope clause, right? Scope clause has traditionally changed because there's been new technology introduced, and there's value in it, and it causes the airlines to adjust for that. And I think that's not just true in the U.S. I think as new technology comes into the market, it draws in global acceptance and/or participation.
Thank you so much.
Great to have spent some time with you.